You need to take radical responsibility. I want to start today by saying something clearly before anything else, so we are on the same page. What happened to you is not your fault. Your childhood was not your fault. The parents who failed you, not your fault. The systems that didn't protect you, not your fault. The opportunities you didn't get, the support you didn't have, the starting line you were handed, all not your fault. And I need you to really hear that and let it sink in before I get into this video. Because what I'm about to talk about is not blame and it's not shame. And it is not about pretending that your past didn't happen or that it didn't cost you. It is about power. It is about agency. Specifically, how I got my power back despite my circumstances. Not that my circumstances changed, because I want to be clear with that. It's not about the people who failed me finally showing up, because that didn't happen. And it is not when life got easier, because that never happened. I got my power back when I made a decision. And that decision changed everything for me. My name is Dinah Lively, and today we are talking about radical responsibility and what it means when your past is not your fault. Let's get into it. Before I get into my story, I want to acknowledge something. The phrase radical responsibility has a bad rap. And honestly, that reputation is earned, because a lot of times when we're talking about radical responsibility, what they're really saying is shut up about your past, shut up about your trauma. None of that matters. They just want you to take ownership and move on. And that framing is really harmful and truly dismissive. It tells people who are genuinely failed by the systems, by their parents, by their upbringing, that their stories don't matter, that their context doesn't matter, and that they simply should just choose better. And I want to be clear that that's not what we're talking about today. And if that's the version of radical responsibility that you've been introduced to in the past, I completely understand why you'd be resistant to the conversation, because I know I would be. The version of radical responsibility I want to talk about today doesn't erase your past. It doesn't minimize what was done to you. It doesn't ask you to perform healing that you haven't done yet, or pretend your starting point was the same as somebody else's. It looks like something different, something harder, something that once understood gave me something back that I didn't even know that I had lost. It asks, given everything that has happened to you, everything that was done to you, taken from you, withheld from you, who do you want to become? And what are you willing to do to get there? The question is not about blame. It is about agency. And agency is power. So let me tell you about my story, because I don't think you could fully understand what I mean about radical responsibility unless I tell you about my past and my story. I grew up in an extremely abusive and neglectful home. My mother was not a safe person, and I was parentified at a really young age. On top of all that, I was also intentionally starved as a child, and the abuse and neglect got so bad I got placed into foster care at the age of 12. I did not grow up with financial stability. I did not grow up with emotional stability. I did not have parents who sat me down to talk about my future, about college, about careers, about what I wanted my life to look like. I had parents that were so consumed by their dysfunction that my future was not on their radar at all. And yet, somewhere in the middle of all of that, I decided I was gonna go to college. I didn't know where that gall came from. I still don't know where my audacity comes from. Maybe it was my stubbornness, maybe it was my faith, maybe it was a bit of desperation in there. Maybe it was the part of me that wanted to be understood, that wanted to be seen. I really don't know. But I knew that education was the only door I could open for myself. And that decision was the first act of radical responsibility I ever took. So here's what happened when I tried to make that dream real. I tried to apply for financial aid. Everybody knows that when you go to school, you apply for financial aid. You need your parents' financial income, their tax information, their social security numbers, basic information that most teenagers get without question, because a lot of parents understand this already. But I couldn't get this information. My parents, who were legally responsible for me, did not want to give it to me. They would not cooperate. They would not fill out the forms. They would not provide what I needed so I can get the financial aid to go to school. This is aid that was going to pay for my education. Aid that was just sitting there, available, waiting for me. If only the adults in my life had done the bare minimum to help me access it. They didn't, so I couldn't. And then at 18 years old, I got kicked out by my legal father on my own. no support, no safety net, no blueprint, just me and the decision that I made that I was going to college, that I was going to build something, that this was not going to be the end of my story, and absolutely no system or infrastructure was going to make it happen for me. It took me 6 years to graduate college after I graduated from high school. 6 years. Not because I wasn't smart enough, not because I didn't want it badly enough, but because I was doing it alone, navigating systems that were not designed to be navigated without help, working to support myself while trying to pursue my education, figuring it out piece by piece with very little guidance on how to get from where I was to where I was trying to go. 6 years, and I did it. I graduated with honors and distinction from a real university with a real degree that I earned. Nobody handed it to me. I fought for it against circumstances that were specifically designed to prevent it. And I want to tell you that in that moment, I knew I was going to make it. Not when I finally got my cap and gown. Before that, it was the moment I stopped waiting for my parents to give me something that I needed, and I started to figure out how to get it anyway. That was the moment I took radical responsibility for my own life. And that was the moment I got my power back. So I want to talk about what radical responsibility actually is, because it's not what most people think it is. Radical responsibility is not pretending that your circumstances don't exist. It is not ignoring the ways, the systems, your parents, and other people might have failed you. It is not toxic positivity, and it damn sure is not pulling yourself by the bootstraps that you don't even have. Radical responsibility is the decision to become the author in your own story, in spite of everything that has tried to write it for you. It's the moment you decide to stop, not denying what happened to you or denying your story, but to stop waiting for the very people who created the problem to solve it, because 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna. Stop waiting for that apology that'll never come. Stop waiting for your circumstances to perfectly align before you take your next step. Stop outsourcing your future to people who have already decided that your future doesn't mean much. And start asking yourself, given where I am, with what I have, what is the next right move that I can make for myself? And that's the distinction I want you to hold, because it changes everything. Here's the difference between responsibility and fault. Fault looks backward. It assigns blame for what already happened. And your past, what was done from you, what was withheld from you, how it failed you, was not your fault. Responsibility looks forward. It asks not who caused it, but who is going to move through it. And the answer, as unfair as it is, as much as it is not the answer that we want to give, is you. The answer is you. Because the alternative is waiting, and waiting keeps you stagnant. And when you're stagnant, your circumstances can never change. My parents not filling out my FAFSA, not my fault. Me getting kicked out at 18, not my fault. It taking me 6 years to graduate college that should have taken me 4. Not my fault. And I have every right to be angry about that. And I was for a long time. But I also had a goal, and I had to come to terms with that reality so that I could achieve my goal. I could not change what my parents did or didn't do. I could not make them cooperate. I can't go back in time and start a new life with new parents. Although I really wish I had that capability. What I was gonna do is figure out how to move forward from the starting line that I was given. That is radical responsibility. Not overextending grace to the people who failed you. Agency for yourself. I wanna talk about what coming to terms with my situation actually looked like for me. And I think when people say take radical responsibility, they never talk about how to implement that in your day-to-day life. For me, coming to terms started with grief. I had to grieve the support that I knew I was never going to get. At some point, I had to stop allocating all of this energy at being angry at my parents for not showing up in the ways that I wish they had. I had to take that energy to figure out how I was going to get from where I was to where I was trying to go. At some point, I had to allocate that same energy into figuring out what my options were. And I'm not gonna sit up here and lie to you. That transition is not easy, and it did take me a long time. And I want to be clear that it does not make your anger wrong. Your anger is valid, but I could not be angry and build a good life for myself at the same time. At some point, I had to choose. Coming to terms also meant being brutally honest with my situation, not catastrophizing it, and damn sure not minimizing it. Just seeing it clearly for what it is. I'm 18 years old. I have no financial support. I didn't have access to my FAFSA, and I want to go to college. What were the actual paths to get me from here to there? What does each one require? And what can I control and what I cannot control? And that kind of clarity, the willingness to look at your situation and your circumstances for what they are, that is a form of radical responsibility. Seeing your situation accurately is the first step to overcoming it. And you have to come to terms with the fact that your timeline might be different. That 6 years it took me to get my degree, that was not failure. 6 years is what it took for me to do something without support that most people take for granted. 6 years is what radical responsibility looks like without having a safety net. It is slower, it is harder, but it is just as valid. Your timeline is not a reflection of your worth. It is a simple reflection of your life circumstances that you had no control over. And the fact that you kept on going is everything. And I want to talk about what radical responsibility might look like for you right now in your actual life. Not a theory and not a motivational poster, in the real, specific, and sometimes even painful circumstances that you might be in right now. Maybe you're waiting for a parent to acknowledge what they did for you to move forward. Radical responsibility says you don't need their acknowledgement to begin with. The acknowledgement would be healing, but the absence of it is not a stop sign. Maybe you're in a situation right now, whether that be it financially, relationally, or professionally, that is genuinely difficult and genuinely not your fault. Radical responsibility does not force you to pretend otherwise. It asks, given this situation, what is one thing you can do to move forward to where you want to go? Not everything, just one thing. Maybe you've been telling yourself or have been told that your starting point is your end point, that where you came from limits where you could go. Radical responsibility says your starting point is a fact. Your ending point is a decision, and that decision is yours to make. Maybe, and I say this with full empathy and zero judgment, you have been waiting for things to get easier, waiting for somebody to rescue you, waiting for the right moment, for the right circumstances, for the right support. Radical responsibility says waiting is the cost. Every day you wait for your circumstances to be perfect is a day you give your circumstances to fix themselves, and they never will. And I want to be clear, you don't have to have it all figured out, because I didn't. You don't have to be healed completely, because I for sure was not. You don't have to have the support that you were never going to get to begin with. You just have to take the next step from where you are with what you have. Not looking to the left or right and focusing on what everybody else has, but focusing on you and what you can do. And I want to talk about the power that you get back, the agency that you now have. When you take radical responsibility, you get your power back. Not eventually, almost immediately. When I stopped waiting for my parents to give me something that they were never going to give me, and I started figuring it out myself, that's when something shifted for me. My situation didn't change. The obstacles were still there. The systems that were set up to have me fail were definitely still there. But I was no longer at the mercy of them. I was moving. I was building. I was deciding. And that, the deciding, is power. Because here's what giving your power actually looks like. It looks like making your forward motion contingent on somebody else's actions. It looks like saying, I'll do something when they apologize, or I'll build when they support me, or I'll heal when they acknowledge what they did. When that person, that parent, that circumstance, that system is in the control of your next step. They have your power. And most of the time, they don't know that they have that power or don't even care about it. Radical responsibility is taking it back. It's saying, I'm not waiting anymore. Not because what happened was okay, and not because I didn't deserve better, because I did, and you did too, but because I deserve to build a good life for myself and not stay stuck in somebody else's past failures. When I finally got my degree, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not pride, but power. Doing the thing that I set out to do. Who looked at every obstacle and every person who withheld and every system who made it harder and did it anyways. And that power is available to you. Not when your circumstances get better, and not when people who have failed you in the past finally show up. Now, in the middle of it, the moment you decide that you are the author of what comes next. And I want to talk about who this video is for. This video is for the girl who is still carrying the weight of what was done to her, who is tired of waiting, tired of being angry, tired of watching other people move on with their life while she stays stagnant in the situation and the circumstances that were never her fault to begin with. I see you. And I want to tell you that what happened to you was real. The failures of others were real. The absence of the support that you needed is real. The systems and the worldly barriers are very real. None of that is in question. And you're still here watching this video because you know that there's a little piece in you that wants to move forward. You refusing to give up on yourself, that is radical responsibility, and you are already doing it. You did not choose your starting point, but you do not have to choose it as your ending point. The past is not your fault, but your future is in your power, and you can take your power back starting today. And that is what becoming looks like. Not a perfect path, but a chosen one to move forward. That is the video for today. We are choosing radical responsibility. Your past is not your fault, but your future is your responsibility. And these two truths can live in the same sentence, in the same life, and in the same situation. Because one was about what was done to you, and the next is about what you choose for yourself. Drop a comment down below and tell me what is one thing you have chosen to take radical responsibility for, even though your situation was not your fault. I read every single comment and I want you to know that I see you. Subscribe if you have not already. I'm here every Sunday and we are just getting started. Make sure to follow me on TikTok and on Instagram. I show you guys my makeup videos where I talk about beauty through the lens of restoration. I talk about working out for your mental fitness, and I share my amazing family and community with you guys. I'm really excited for next Sunday's video and I hope to see you guys there. I'll see you next Sunday. Now go get your power back.